Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we have something truly special in store for you. I'm joined by, of course, Jason here and Lambercy, my regulars on the channel. Then we have a very special guest here, ExtraZero, and he's going to share some paranormal experiences that he had. Not one, not two, but three. And these two occurrences came from the 1990s and 2014. So you don't want to miss out on these stories. I'm sure it'll send shivers down your spine. And so grab that popcorn and let's get ready to start a CAPS conversation with ExtraZero. Gentlemen, how are you all today? And thanks for joining me. I know we've been trying to record this video for like almost 3 weeks now. I feel like something's trying to tell us not to do it. What do you think? Is that true?
Definitely. There's powers beyond the periphery of our senses that have been preventing us from causing postponements, and something's afoot.
And there you go, Lambercy. And then we had what, a power outage, two power outages, a storm. I think ExtraZero got sick.
Bronchitis.
My
computer froze 15 minutes ago. I had to reboot it.
Okay. All right. Everyone, the recording is set. So all good vibes here. Well, everyone knows Jason Lambercy from the channel. However, I want to give a chance for ExtraZero to kind of give a little introduction to him, to everyone, where he's from, and kind of a brief background. Why don't you go ahead and do that, Extra?
Yeah, well, first off, thanks for having me. I love getting to talk about things that I don't normally get a chance to talk about, so I'm really excited to be here and to talk some paranormal stuff with you guys.
Yeah.
A lot of people probably know me from one of two realms. Either know me from being the producer for the Legion of Memers. I really got my start meming Side Scrollers. If you don't follow them, it's a great show. It's a gaming and entertainment podcast that Sutter and Craig puts out. And I got the attention of No Green Rocks, and he brought me into the Legion, and just really came in and really started kicking butt over there. And, I found my way in the role of producer for the show. So I help produce the meme stream, and I book all of our guests and help run the show. And really have a good time over there. I've also recently joined with Gronking on Dogs, so I do meme edits for Lethal Lightning over on his channel, and I'm an occasional once a week I hop on with those guys to talk gaming. And then also a lot of people who are in the collecting space know me. I've been on a couple shows, but in 2017, I founded Figure Action. We're a collector's podcast. So if you're into Transformers, G.I. Joe, Marvel Legends, Black Series, or high-end collectibles, we talk about it there. We've had a lot of industry folks on there. We've had voice actors. So if you're into any of that stuff, and we are completely apolitical over there. It's funny because I'm on two shows that are very ingrained in the culture, and then one where we are just completely outside of it, or just for the collecting. If you're into collecting and industry stuff, especially Transformers, check us out, and I'll send you over my link tree if you want to include that. But I have a lot of fun in all three outlets, and if you give me a follow over on Twitter, I'm a good source for memes. So
very cool.
It's good to have.
Go ahead, Jason.
It's good to have balance, and to balance the political with just the fun and so forth. And also, if you follow him on Twitter, he will share whatever he's grilling in the backyard. It's wonderful.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that I'm an aspiring pitmaster as well.
Okay.
So something I
maybe that's your third channel where you show barbecue skills.
Eventually.
See, here's the thing. I'm gonna have to see one of those videos. If you don't click those tongs 2 times, you're lying.
I also own 3 culinary torches. I have the Iwatani culinary torch for brulees. I have a Burns-O-Matic, which actually isn't really a culinary torch, but the Searsall attachment that makes it one. So I actually have a hardware hardware store torch. And then my favorite is the SUV gun. My wife got that for me a couple Christmases ago, and that's like an actual propane flamethrower that sears meat in seconds. So I'm very hardcore with it.
This isn't Bill Gates fake meat, people. This is good stuff.
This is the real deal.
Real deal. All right, so I'm excited to kind of and interested in hearing your 3 stories. Now, can you kind of just explain the context before we get into story 1? So what are we expecting here, really?
So I guess the crux of it all is, as far as I can account, these were ghost paranormal encounters that I had. I never. I guess I should preface this with I never actually saw an apparition, like a physical form. However, I have felt, like physically felt, and seen them manipulate objects.
Okay. And that's typical. I don't know. Like if you hear other stories, you'll have one or the other. You'll have one person that sees something, right?
Mhm.
Then you'll have someone that sees like a shadow person or something like that, or you'll have someone who's this chair moved across the floor, and there were bodies in my pool. But you have those type of paranormal things. Jason or Lamberty, have you ever experienced anything that you can relate to this, or is this going to all be new to you as well?
So I was age 8 or 9, and it was during the summer. And my best friend, his house was across the street and like kind of down the block. And it was the middle of the day during the summer vacation. We're sitting on his fence, kind of like both like looking onto the horizon where my house was. And I'm looking at my house, and I see this form go down one set of steps and then down another set of steps. And before I said anything, my buddy Eric said, "There's somebody in your house." and so I was a latchkey child, so it was just me and my brother. My brother was not there; he was at a friend's house. So I don't know if it was bravery or stupidity. We got on our bikes, we sped that block and a half, and we went into the house. We searched the house, did not find anybody. But what's crazy is that there were no the sun was coming towards the house, so it was not sunlight coming through the house in the back where like a tree was moving, and the trees were young enough and they were in the backyard, so it could not have been a swaying branch, and it was not a plane because we would have seen the plane shadow. That's the one thing that I've seen where there was a witness and it was a form.
Nice.
And somehow I managed to stay in that house another few years until I graduated from high school. But that's the closest I've got to something that would make me go pale.
Okay, Lamberty, anything for you?
Well, I've always grown up in either old houses or places where lots of people have lived and had trauma happen to them, so I'm kind of used to that. I remember one time when I was working as a third-party vendor and stuff, we were hoteled up in this place that was supposedly haunted, according to our regional manager, right? And I spent that whole night trying to look for this supposed haunting and stuff, but because I'm used to hearing weird noises, seeing weird shit. Matter of fact, my own bathroom, I'll take a shower, and half the time the light will just turn off, and this is all you'll hear from me. I'll be like, all right, whoever's trying to haunt me, I'm not leaving. Like, this is the cheapest rent around here. You're just gonna have to deal with me. Like, I don't care. I'm not leaving.
I have not experienced anything, but I'm always intrigued with people who have. So I'm very excited, like I said earlier, ExtraZero, to hear what you have to say. I'm glad Jason and Lamberty have some type of, I don't know, they have experienced something so they can relate to it in a way. Now, your first story happened in 1990. I don't know the exact date, but you can go ahead and just kind of run with it if you want.
I know it was probably summertime when this happened, and I know this because I grew up pretty poor. I grew up in a small town, and in the East Coast, and it gets very hot and humid. And we grew up without air conditioning. We didn't have air conditioning until I'd say probably like 1997 when we moved.
Okay. And how old were you during this time?
I was 5. So I was born in 85. And I know I was 5 because '89 was when Ninja Turtles kicked off. And I remember Christmas '89 was like Turtle Mania.
Yeah.
We had Turtles and Simpsons.
You're
Yeah.
about a few years old, younger than me, so I think we're right in that same age bracket. And I know I'm picturing that now.
I would say something else great happened in '89, but then I feel like I'm cocky for saying that I was born that year.
So for those of you watching, this means there's still Soviet Union, and there was no internet.
Yes.
No internet. No cell phone. Yeah. Okay. So you were 5. You was summer of 1989.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I really remember. So my biological mom and my half sister's father were going through some stuff, and they were on the verge of splitting. And there was a lot of tension in the house already. So I kind of got accustomed to at night hearing stuff like cabinets slamming and dishes not necessarily smashing, but being like shoved, like just angry noises. Because it was a small house. It was a very small house. It was probably like a 900-foot square home. It was 3 bedrooms and 1 bathroom, and then a tiny kitchen. And I guess you could call it a living room, but it really only sat like a couch and a TV.
Okay.
So there was a lot of tension in the house as it was. And so a lot of nights, and my sister, I don't want to get into it, but my sister's dad was abusive. But so there's a lot of tension in the house. And as a kid, I just kind of at night, I wanted to be in my bedroom. I didn't care how hot the house was. I just opened up the windows. It had those crappy fans, the box fans you could put in your window to try and get the air out.
Oh, the memories.
Created some white noises.
Right.
So I didn't want to leave the room because he terrified me. But that summer, I noticed things starting to happen in the house. And I think that whatever was there was feeding off. Either I was just noticing it, because when you're 5, you're starting to really become aware of things. But I started noticing things like I used to love to draw, and I still like to draw. But I would, and I don't know if you guys ever did this, where you just would have like your paper, I wanted to make a book. So I'd have all my pieces of paper just like all over the floor, like in little compartmentalized stacks. And I think the first thing I really remember creeping me out was I was in bed and lying there, and I heard something stepping on the paper. And I'm like,
okay.
I'm when you're a kid, you do that. It's just a dream. It's nothing. And you
don't have any animals or cats in the room, right?
Yeah, we had to get rid of our dog because we had to get rid of our dog in '89 because my sister was allergic.
Okay.
So,
this was like the kind of the crinkle on the sheet. This wasn't papers
carpet.
Rustling. This is the crinkle of a foot.
Like if you stepped on paper on carpet, it was that noise.
Oh, man.
And so I'd say,
okay,
I'd get up and I say to my mom, like, I think something was in my room. Oh no, there was nothing in your room. Something stepped on my drawings. Oh, nothing stepped on your drawings. Well, it looks like something stepped on my drawings. Nothing stepped on your drawings, and they were crinkled. And it was
I was just going to ask you that. Did you see like an imprint of like?
It wasn't like a foot, but it was just they weren't fresh, flat sheets of paper.
They were compressed down.
And, of course, as a kid, you kind of get a little gaslit with, well, maybe you stepped on them. Maybe you don't remember. Maybe you were asleep. Maybe. And this happened a few other times. And I just kind of would just tune things out. And I started sleeping with the covers over my head. Like, I just didn't want to see anything. So
I feel like every kid used to do that and stuff, but then we'd have to have like our feet underneath too.
Yeah, no, I had everything.
If any part of our body is outside of the blanket, we would feel like we'd be able to be snatched, but somehow magically under this thin little sheet, this thin little blanket.
You just didn't want to see it. Like that was the thing. It's like if there was something there, you just didn't want to see it. You wanted to shield yourself. And I had this system where I would sleep up against the wall, and I would, because, you put the cover over your head, you get hot and you couldn't really breathe. So I had the system where I would sleep up against the wall so I could actually suck the cooler air off the wall.
Okay. Okay.
Because we're talking like, Northeast summertime, hot, humid, muggy. And we also lived on, this was before you could, back then you could actually afford waterfront because nobody wanted it. But, we had waterfront. So it was extra humid and extra swampy.
As someone from the Northeast, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. I can. Yeah. I was about the same age. I was in Arizona, and it was about the same heat, but it wasn't humid. We had a water cooler, but yeah, it was
swamp coolers at least work there.
Yeah.
They don't work here.
No.
Yeah.
But that was the start of it. And
Okay.
what I remember very vividly was the first time that it got, I guess, compelling to look. And so I didn't have a term for this until years later. I came to find it's called the Oz effect. And I remember laying in bed one night, and again, we lived waterfront and woods. And so you'd hear owls, you'd hear all kinds of animals, you'd hear rustling in the woods, and the woods were right across the street from us. And then we had the waterfront. The water wasn't like beach noises, but you'd hear, noises. And I remember just this one particular night, everything got quiet, like eerily quiet. And it just stood out. Like, why is it so quiet? It was eerie. And there was just this stillness in the room. And then all of a sudden it got cold, like cold. And we didn't have air conditioning. It was humid. And the thing I remember the most was this condensation beating up on the walls.
Oh, wow.
And it just looked running. And I just was thinking to myself, this has to be a dream. This isn't real. This isn't real. There's no way it's cold. Why is it cold? Is it? And I remember even distinctly having this thought, is it raining inside? Like, do we have a leak?
Yeah.
Because it was very uncharacteristic to see. It wasn't like water was pouring. It just looked like the walls were sweating. And then...
And it's interesting you said that it was quiet, because
yes.
Most people say, if you don't hear birds or crickets or something like that, then something is off.
Yeah.
They say that when they were fighting over there in Germany in World War II, when you would hear nothing, that's when you knew something was going to happen. So I'm curious. I'm sure that's related somehow. Yeah.
Well, that's where, and I mentioned the Ninja Turtles. I had from that Christmas, a 3-foot tall stuffed Michelangelo. Okay. And I think they sold these things at I remember seeing them at places like Lionel Kitty City, if you remember them. But they were official. They weren't like carnival bootlegs. They were the real deal. One of my uncles got it for me, and I had it just perpetually propped up against my toy box. And it was sitting there, it was slumped over, it was sitting up, feet spread out. And it got up. I was staring at the wall where I saw this condensation, and my eyes were drawn to the Michelangelo, and it stood up. It
was a stuffed animal.
It was a stuffed animal, and it stood up.
Oh man!
And so my first instinct was blankets over my head, and I remember hyperventilating. This isn't real. This isn't happening. This is a nightmare. I'm dreaming. This isn't real. I'm just trying to get bearing on it. I was in disbelief, and I was terrified, and I didn't know what to do. And I just, again, compulsion kicked in, and I had to look. And when I pulled the blankets down, it was closer. What? It was standing there, just motionless. And I just stared at it for a second, and then I see it move 1 foot forward. And same deal, blankets. That was the motion. And it kind of looked like somebody had it by its shoulders, but then the foot moved. And I just...
So it was kind of moving almost like a puppeteer, maybe.
Kind of like somebody was holding it. How you would play walk with something that's a big stuffed animal.
Yeah.
An adult would, hey, here comes Mr. Pear. The foot kicked forward. It kind of pivoted, and I pulled the blankets right up. And then I just, same thing repeated. This is a dream. This isn't real. I remember sweating bullets. I remember this cold sweat running down my back. And even though the room had just gotten cold, I just just remember just being coated in terror sweat and shaking, and then compulsion kicked in again, and I was like, this thing's this can't be real, this can't be real. And I pulled the blankets down, and it was right there in front of my face, and I did two things. And don't judge me because I was 5, but I screamed to the top of my lungs, and I pissed my pants. Like, I just
no judging.
completely weighted my bladder.
Wow.
Screaming. And I remember my mom runs in, and she's, you know, comforting, hey, you know, what happened? And I was lost for words and trying to tell her. And finally, you know, and I didn't want this toy in my room anymore. I wanted it gone. It got up, it moved. No, you had to have been playing with it before bed. You know, don't worry. You know, you probably forgot about it. It scared you. It's okay. And it was interesting too, because another detail is that while the walls are sweating, there was, and this is important because this happened later on, there was a static that filled the room, like a visible static that you could see. Like like when you turn
like
it,
your hair was on your arms or standing up, or type of static, or more of like a sound?
No, there was no sound. It was like a visual. It was this.
Okay,
You
I've
could
heard that
see
before.
it in the air.
So almost like when your TV's kind of going out, like old school.
It wasn't even like the TV was going out. It was like, you know, when you had bunny ears and the channel was coming in enough to see it, but it was visible. So that was something that I thought was odd. And because the moment I screamed, the sound came back and the static dissipated.
What happened to the turtle?
My mom took the turtle out of the room, and
okay, but after you screamed though, did it like fall?
Yeah, it fell. It was like Toy Story. Jeez. It was like Andy's coming. It just dropped. Okay. Yeah, so the turtle dropped, the static went away, and the sound came back.
Like the
and
birds.
There I was sitting upright in a bed, covered in piss and sweat and terror, and trying to get my words together, and you know, and you know, my mom's frustrated because she's got to change the sheets and everything.
Yeah, parent, you kind of have to, right? Because you have to first comfort your screaming child, and then you have to kind of think about it your own way, like, okay, what actually happened here? Because you didn't physically see it. But I'm curious to hear what your mom had to say about this.
Yeah, we didn't talk about it until I was a teenager.
Okay.
The other incident that we had.
And you and just to be clear, like you were 5. So were you watching shows like Scooby-Doo?
No,
were you?
I was Turtles. I was Transformers. I was watching those. G.I. Joe. I was watching Garfield and Friends.
What about you didn't watch any like The Shining, right? Like the night before.
No, I wasn't into horror at that age at all.
Okay.
So, you know, I was into like the lighthearted and action stuff, and it wasn't until later that I got exposure to horror. But they were pretty good at keeping me, and my uncles didn't like me consuming any of that. So at this point, like, I didn't have any real reference of ghosts or anything other than like, hey, you know, somebody puts a sheet over them, boo, I'm a ghost. You know, Charlie, you know, Charlie Brown Halloween stuff. You know,
probably better than me. I still remember thinking I was, you know, around 5 years old. I thought I was like outsmarting people and stuff when I stuck out of my room to go see the scary movie they were watching and stuff. You guys could guess the scary movie and stuff, but let me just put it like this: after I caught, you know, a little bit of the movie, I didn't like any kind of dolls after that. What movie do you think you caught?
Chucky.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From that day on, you know, whenever I see someone who collects dolls or anything, I just look at them like, you're fucking crazy.
Okay. So what happened like the day before, the morning after?
The morning after, it was just kind of business as usual. I wanted like her to donate it, and she was like, no, your uncle gave you this, you're fine. It didn't get up and move. Just, you love the turtles. You know, are you okay? And there was stuff going on with that marriage, and she was more focused on that.
Yeah.
You know, she was in the middle of a failing marriage, and so she didn't really address it. And there was a lot of tension. And I also was, my grandparents were 2 doors down at this place, and my grandmother really was the person that ended up raising me. So I mean, that's a whole other story. But I remember talking to my grandmother about it, and she was concerned, as was my great aunt. My great aunt lit, so it was our house, my great aunt, which was my grandfather's sister, and then my grandparents. So we were all like very, very close in this cluster of houses that were waterfront.
Mhm.
And sometime after that was the second incident, and it was probably the end of summer because it was still hot.
Okay.
And I remember I was in bed and the same exact thing happened. Not with the turtle, but where it got eerily quiet, the walls started to sweat,
Okay.
the static manifested itself.
So since you knew this happened before, were you like, well, okay,
Petrified.
like, yeah, okay. So you were expecting something more to happen.
And so,
And you were still having the same tension in the house at the time because it was
yeah.
the same summer.
Yeah.
Okay.
So my first instinct was to just scream at the top of my lungs.
Fair.
And so years later, I'd learned that this was what they call the Oz effect. And I don't know what happened, but when I screamed at the top of my lungs, there was no noise whatsoever.
Okay.
And I was panicked. And I just remember just like
Okay.
trying, and I could feel it. I could feel it right here. I could feel it in my esophagus. I could feel it in my chest. And there was no sound whatsoever. So as much as my stepdad terrified the shit out of me, I remember opening my door and just, running, a little bit down the hallway and just pounding on my mom and his bedroom. And what was freaky was as hard as I hit that door, there was no sound.
Oof.
And I could I wasn't asleep. I wasn't sleepwalking because I know my hand, I was feeling it on my hand. And I just was there and I was pounding at that door and screaming, and it made no noise. And the only thing I could hear was my heartbeat through
That's
my head.
Yeah.
So
That's
my
terrifying.
my one sister was a newborn at the time, and the other was 3. And I remember going into her room and just I had no choice, but the 3-year-old, I just shook her awake.
Mhm.
And when I did that, she started crying and everything went away. The static went away, the sound came back,
Was
and
there
the
any
temperature,
other toy or anything that moved or anything like that?
nothing moved this time.
Okay.
And
Did anyone in your house experience anything like this at the
well,
same
so
time?
that's what's interesting. So not long after that, my mom and my sister's dad had a big fallout. He ended up taking over the house. We ended up having to go live with my grandparents. So we got out of that house. And it wasn't until years later, after my mom had remarried, and I asked her about it. And I was like, do you remember like the stuff in the house? Do you remember when I had that? And I was like, maybe like 13 or 14. And she was like, yeah, that happened. She was like, the kitchen cabinets used to slam, dishes used to move.
So she was seeing actual stuff for her from her
Yeah,
own eyes.
and she
Okay.
didn't want me to know ghosts were real.
So was this before so she saw all this before your
Mhm.
event?
She did. So she was
Okay.
aware, and she and I don't speak to this day. She got into some weird stuff, and again, as I mentioned, my grandparents primarily raised me, but
Yeah.
I did still talk to her up until my early 20s. But yeah, she confirmed that stuff was real, and she said that when there's a lot of tension in the house, it would get bad. And so we had a family, again, like we had a family plot. Like my grandparents were down there. It was my grandfather's family's land.
Mhm.
And she always suspected it was because her grandmother lost a baby and blamed herself and was a very strict Catholic. And
Okay.
she thought that it was my great grandmother, haunting the place. Like that was her hypothesis. I don't know what it was because it could have been anything. And she was like, oh,
Yeah.
she was probably trying to play with you. And that's why she picked up the Ninja Turtle. And it's like, I don't know about this.
Mhm.
It's strange because it didn't seem like it was malevolent, but it also didn't seem like it was benevolent.
Yeah, because like, why would you make the walls sweat if you didn't
Yeah.
want to terrify someone?
Yeah.
But maybe who knows? Maybe that's just how the energy was pulled right? From the air, from the humidity or whatever, for them to do that. I mean, I've heard other podcasts, I've heard other TV shows, to make something move like that. If it is spiritual, that takes a lot of energy. Did your sisters?
They were too young.
Okay.
They were way too young, because again, we got out when I was 5 and they were newborn and 3. So they didn't remember anything. But, you know, as a teenager, I did ask about it, because it was such a vivid memory. And at first I was told, no, nothing happened. You were dreaming. And then, you know, when I was a bit older and we were in a house that was fine, she said, yeah, that there was a lot of stuff she witnessed with the
So
cabinets, particularly.
Cabinets.
Yeah.
Okay.
And footsteps. And she never experienced the things like I did with the, you know, lack of sound, but she did say she did see the static.
Yeah, and they say sometimes kids, and Jason, you're probably going to say this too, but sometimes they say kids are like are more tuned in on this kind of stuff. Like when we get older, right, less stuff happens to us, but like as kids, it's like turning the volume to 10, right? Maybe that's why they didn't really see that or deal with the same stuff.
I wouldn't even really say that less stuff happens to us as adults. I think just life beats us the hell down, that we just attribute everything to just it's nothing.
I think we're
maybe.
able to
One more
sleep
thing.
through a little bit more as adults.
I think kids are just a little bit tuned in. Yeah. Jason, were you going to say something?
Yeah, can you help me in the audience understand the static? What is that like? What is that like to experience it? Can you is there something from a movie that's similar? Help us
Are we
understand.
talking
It's
about
like
the
a
TV
film
static?
grain. Yeah, it's like a film grain, but it's real. It's in front of you. The closest thing I've ever seen is the effect in like Silent Hill 2 and 3. And
okay.
you know, it's like that effect that they could only do on PlayStation 2. But it's like this film grain that appears in front of you. You just see it, and it's like you can see through it. It's not like you've lost vision or anything, but it's there. It's like a fog. It's like a fog, but it's a weird fog that you can't really explain unless you see it yourself. But it's there.
Is it a color shift, or is it?
Oh yeah.
Which way does the color shift? Towards the blue, towards the orange?
White.
Oh.
Yeah, it's white.
Okay.
It's
that's
white
why I was thinking
static.
it was more like when you're, like you said, when the TV, when you have antennas and the TV. And if you're a younger audience and you're watching, yes, TVs used to have these things called antennas where you would move them and adjust your frequency of the TV. That's so bizarre to hear.
And it doesn't, when you move your hand through it, it's not like a fog or a smoke. It doesn't react. It's there. It's not like you can move through it or
when you looked at did you ever, like, I don't know if you did this, but if you were to look at your hand, was your hand staticky or something like that? Would it be like
my hand wasn't staticky, and it's just kind of like it's there, but it's in the distance. It's like, it's so hard to describe accurately, because it's, like I said, it's not like a fog or a smoke. It's just like this omnipresence that's there that you can't swat away. It's not really in front of you. It's always a little bit. It's like, you know, it's not in your peripheral, but you can see it, and it's like it's a little bit of a distance from you. It's not encapsulating you, but it encapsulates the room, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, and so when you were a teenager, did you still have the turtle?
No, that got tossed. In fact, we abandoned a lot of stuff in that house, and my sister's dad destroyed a lot of stuff. So he actually kind of did a favor and destroyed that turtle.
Okay.
Have you in years since, have you like Googled to see if there's any like news stories about that neighborhood or that house? Claims that have been made since you and your family left.
So I actually, it's funny you mentioned that. I've asked people about it, and that house no longer exists. It was knocked down in 2001, I believe. So my aunt and uncle, my grandfather gave the plot of land that was my great aunt's to my uncle and my aunt and uncle, and they built their house there. And then they built a house where that house was the house that I grew up in. They built my great aunt a new house. They got her like a brand new modular home and put it on top. And they built it like in a slightly different spot. So where the garden used to be, that's where the house was. And my aunt and uncle actually moved in 2022. They moved to Florida and they sold everything. And a friend of the family was renting. They had an older lady that was renting it for a while. And I would ask my aunt and uncle, did she ever say anything? And they're like, nah, she didn't. And then we have a friend of the family who ended up renting the house afterwards. And I asked her, I was like, her name's Kathy. And I said, did anything strange ever happen in that house? And she couldn't recall. She didn't think anything ever did. She said everything's been fine. So I don't know if moving it or it was like the lack of tension or fighting in there dissipated it. But I, as far as I know, after that, no one at least said anything about that house. And I don't know who owns it now, because after my aunt and uncle moved, they sold it to a bunch of people. They bought their house and the side house in a bundle. So I don't know. It'd be kind of weird to go knock on the door and be like, hey, you don't know me, but is anything paranormal happening?
Yeah. Have you seen any walking turtles?
Yeah.
I have a theory that a lot of the haunted houses and haunted house stories that you hear tend to happen in the Northeast, though. But I think that also has to do with the fact that the Northeast is the oldest part of the country as well.
Yeah, the South area as well gets it, like Louisiana, Mississippi, sometimes even Florida has a lot of rich history, either from people living there.
There's
or
definitely spots all over the place, but I'm talking about like in the Northeast, you can find and hear about stories in almost every town about like X amount of houses are supposedly haunted.
Yeah, it's not uncommon here to have met somebody or talked to somebody that's had their,
exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So now you alluded to that you had another experience later in life where it confirmed that you weren't crazy when you were 5.
So almost 10 years ago, we're coming up on that. So back in 2014, I had a girlfriend, and I moved in with her, and it was funny because
man, lucky.
Well, now I've got a different one, and but I was seeing this girl, and we hit it off, and I moved in with her. And it was funny, before I did, she told me, she's like, you're gonna think I'm crazy, but my house is haunted.
Oh no.
And
no.
I kind of laughed at it, and I was just like, I don't think you're crazy, but I wasn't prepared for the level that it was.
Okay.
And when I say a string of things happened, there were 2 big incidents that happened there, but there were a string of things. So I remember, back in 2014, I had never seen Game of Thrones, and she was very adamant about showing me Game of Thrones. And she had one of those. What's that?
I'm sorry,
as she should.
Well, I mean, it was before Game of Thrones got bad. So 2014, we were coming up on like season 5.
I still haven't watched a single episode, and I don't plan on it.
But she had one of those TVs. It was a Samsung, and remember back in like the early, or I guess the mid aughts, like the capacitive touch buttons were all the rage.
Oh yeah.
Anytime something pivotal was about to happen in a show or a game, that TV would turn off every single time. And it was like something was messing with us deliberately.
Really?
You're trying to have fun without me?
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
okay.
The skeptic in me was like, I think your TV's just busted. I remember going and getting like some isopropyl alcohol and cleaning. I was like, I bet, look, if you're touching this thing, I bet it's got some finger oil on it. It's probably that. It's what they say about coincidences. Because I'd gone a very long time without experiencing anything like I did back in 1990. So I brushed it off.
Right.
And she had a 6-year-old daughter who was there. She had, the visitation was every other weekend, but the daughter would talk about people that would talk to her in her room.
Oh.
And she was aware of it, and she would talk her through it. And she would, so this at this point, I'm a little bit like, again, I'm trying to be skeptical, imaginary friends, the TV is a coincidence. But then the dog happened. So they didn't own a dog. Both she and the daughter were allergic to dogs.
The dog happened.
But there was a thing that would run through the room on 4 legs. We didn't see it, but we saw the paw prints, and we could feel it run through the room.
So did you have tile? Was it how did
carpet.
you see the pop? Okay.
Carpet.
So you saw the physical indentions.
You would see like a pitter pat 4 paws, and it would run through the room like full speed.
And you knew it was a dog because of the size of the paw.
Just the feeling of it. Like
Okay.
I've my grandmother had golden retrievers, and there's, if you have a golden retriever or a lab and they run through a room, there's
I got one.
You know what it feels like when you're sitting on the couch and you can feel them come by. Like, you can feel the air move, you can feel them just kind of like the floor move, right. And there's a distinct sound. And I remember sitting there, we were watching Game of Thrones, and it happened. And I said, "What was that?" Oh, it's the dog. Because I'm thinking she lived in a mobile home, and I was thinking, like, there's got to be something under the house,
right?
No, there was nothing under the house. This because it happened again, and it ran the other way.
Oh man!
And I was like, okay, well, that's weird. I was like, does it do anything other than that? She said no. So
just runs back and forth.
Yeah, it was more of a fascination than something that actually gave me the creeps. If that makes any sense.
I guess I get that. Yeah, because like it would it'd be a little creepy.
Yeah.
Then you're like curious, what the heck? What would that be in a house? Like
I'd be looking up to see if there was anything that happened to like a dog of some kind in that house.
Well, I mean, it's a mobile home community, and unsavory people live there, and sometimes people shoot dogs, unfortunately.
So would you said you felt the dog like breeze past you? So was there a window up? I'm just going to ask this, was there something like that open? Like
there were no windows in the room.
Okay.
Like the only windows were in the bedroom and the one bathroom. So she had it was a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom mobile home, and there was on the left side of the house there was her craft and cosplay room, then her daughter's room, and those 2 rooms had windows. The one bathroom by the daughter's room had a skylight. The main living area had no. The only window was like in the door, like you had like one of those little cutouts in the door. And then you'd have to go into the kitchen for another little window. And then you'd walk through the kitchen and you'd get to the master bath and the master bedroom. And the laundry room was kind of tied into all that because, again, it was a mobile home. But there weren't any windows. And she also had the AC on. Like she was running the AC. Like she actually, funny enough, had a mobile home, but had a nice AC unit. And it wasn't the AC kicking on.
Okay. But because you also said you saw the paws.
Yeah. And we saw the indents, and I was just like, I was fascinated by it.
Oh, yeah. Was there, so besides the dog, was there anything else that happened?
Yes.
Okay.
So when I first started staying over there, I was like, why do you always sleep on the couch? It's terrible for your back. And she's like, I don't like sleeping in the master. And I was like, we got to sleep in a bed. Come on. This is, I can't do this. I got to go to work. Right. If I'm staying here with you, I got to sleep in a bed. So this is okay. And we had like one more night of sleeping on the couch. This is like when I first had moved my stuff in. I was like, gotta sleep in a bed. And I remember getting settled in, and I didn't have a shirt on, and I remember laying facing her, and she's facing me. And then all of a sudden, it gets quiet.
Oh,
it gets real quiet. And I had this kind of ringing sensation in my ears that appeared. And so I'm like, am I going to pass out or something? And I looked around the room and there's the static. And I'm
Again.
like, I remember this. I remember this. Okay. And I'm just trying to stay optimistic. Like, hey, I'm almost 30 now. This is nuts. This isn't anything to. And I'm talking to her and I'm like, do you see that? And she goes, yeah, that's why I don't sleep in here. And I was like, oh.
So she also saw the static.
She knew about it. Yeah.
Okay.
And then this is where it gets really creepy. Something starts rubbing my back. Like I feel a pair of hands.
Please don't tell me it's a turtle.
No.
Okay.
I feel a pair of hands and I'm looking at both of her hands and I'm like, something's touching me. And she just says, well, tell him to stop. And I said, hey, whoever's touching me, I don't like it. And it started rubbing harder, like a massage. But there is no heat to these hands. Just imagine, if you will, like just the feeling of something pressing on your flesh, but there's no heat. There's no cold. It's just pressure. And it's massaging. It's the weirdest thing because it's not like being in a massage chair. It's not like rubbing up against something. It's just an unearthly feeling to have something. And I just felt violated when it was doing it. And I said, please stop. I don't like this. And then like that static gone and the sound's back to normal. And I started sweating at that point. I was like, I really didn't like that.
So it was a static. It was a static in the quiet, but there was no sweat on the walls or anything like that.
No. This time there was no condensation on the walls.
Did you run out of the room?
We went and slept on the couch.
Okay.
So
and it stopped.
It stopped, but then we ended up moving a little TV to the bedroom, and so we'd sleep with the TV on, and that would, for the most part, ward it away. Okay. But then sometimes it would turn that TV off, and that didn't have a capacitive touch button on it. That just had a regular remote, and it was like I think it was like a Sanyo flat screen, and it wasn't even it was a CRT. It wasn't like an LCD.
Yeah.
And we'd sleep with the TV on at that point, and that seemed to keep it at bay. But every now and then stuff would happen, like the master bathroom door would swing open, and you'd hear something walk out.
And how long did you live here? How long did this
I made it like 2 months.
This is only 2 months of stuff?
I made it like 2 months. I had to get out of it.
So did you break up with this girl? And then
I did. There were external reasons for why I did it. Like she, again, I haven't said her name, but the whole reason I broke up with her was the fact that she suspected that her daughter's father was abusing her, the daughter. Okay. And she had like a whole binder full of pictures of bruises and cuts on the girl. And she was like, yeah, when he really pisses me off, I'm going to use this against him. I'm like, you realize you're going to look like a terrible parent by having this binder full of abuse that you waited for an opportune moment. And I was like, we have to do something about this now.
Right.
If you have a friggin' binder full of pictures of abuse.
So another high tension home.
It wasn't really a high tension home though. It was like there were like, again, I think there was stuff going on, and I don't know, maybe if her daughter was talking to entities, and that was,
Okay. But it almost had a similar feeling where like the home was a little before you, maybe I'm not saying you didn't, but it was just like before you got there, maybe there was some issues that made this thing appear. You know what I mean?
Well, it was ongoing. It was ongoing for her, and she said that it wasn't like anything out of the unusual for me. Now, she claimed she had seen an entity. Like she claimed that like she closed the medicine cabinet one day and there was a man in the mirror with no face with a hat on.
A hat.
Yeah, okay. like a derby hat.
Oh my God.
I don't mean to laugh. I just laugh at creepy things, and I'm like, this is not. This is like.
But I never saw any entities. The only thing I saw physical was the paw prints and the static.
Okay. So you left after 2 months. Did you ever go back? Did you ever connect back with this person?
I didn't go back. I mean,
safe?
Honestly, I did, like years later, I checked in on social media to see, like, are you still there? Just still there.
Wow.
But
I'm curious
yeah,
if they're still having events.
I wouldn't be shocked, because like she had mentioned it was a hot spot. Her excuse for it was that she had she was a twin, but the twin died in childbirth, and she claimed that it was her twin around her the whole time, but then couldn't
Okay.
explain the dog or the man.
That's interesting.
So she claimed.
Well, they do say, I've heard, there are some theories out there where if there's one ghost or one paranormal thing, it tends to draw others,
Yeah.
right? Because there's that energy. So maybe that's what was going on. Maybe the twin was the kicker, the kickoff of it, and the other folks showed up, or the dog was just there running.
Yeah, the dog was the weird one, just because
that is weird. I've never heard of I've heard of I've seen Jason said earlier in the video, you mentioned like a floating figure, or you said you saw the turtle walking. It's always rare when you say when you hear someone say, look, I saw a dog or some type of animal running by. Now, since 2014, you haven't had any other experiences?
I haven't had any experiences, but we did when we were, so my now wife and I, we were house hunting in 2021, and we went to this one old house, and it just had like this vibe to it. And I was like, we can't.
Did she know all this happened to you before?
Yeah.
This? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was very open about
before I marry you, by the way.
I was just I forget how it even came up. I think we were watching some paranormal thing one night with her mom and dad, and I just was like, yeah, I've had experience with ghosts.
Yeah, and, you think their story's crazy. Listen to mine.
Well, it wasn't even a case of one-upping. It was more of a this is what happened to me. And
no, I don't know what I would do. Like, oh, really? Because normally when you watch those shows, you're like, man, it would be crazy to be interesting, or it'd be really neat to experience, or terrifying. All of the above. Kind of experience something like that, and now I do. But the fact that that you have a true story like this, and now, so you said you went to this house, and did you see more static?
I didn't see anything. It was just the feeling. It was the feeling.
Now this feeling, does it like permeate through your body, almost like a cold kind of chill?
It's not like
not even a cold chill. It just feels off, and it permeates through you, right?
Yeah, it puts you on edge, like like almost like you're
like a warning, almost, right?
Yeah.
And
I've felt that in many different places I've approached, and I know what he's talking about. It might even be a northeastern thing. I don't know, but if you have experienced even the slightest and stuff, I feel like you will get this chill in certain areas.
Okay. So you went to this house, you had an odd feeling. Obviously, you didn't buy the house.
No, okay. we didn't buy it. And the house that we're in now, we're fine. Like it's interesting because like that on edge feeling, like I noticed sometimes too, like, where you couldn't explain it, like where you stay somewhere and you feel like maybe you're not safe, like you're on edge, right. Like something's or like you're being watched. It's a strange feeling, like you're going to be ambushed or you're being watched. You're and it was strange because I was in this house with my now wife and my father-in-law, and I was just like, there's something weird about this place. This feels off. And it just,
I would believe you if you said that. I'd be like, okay, we're out. So
yeah. And it was a safe neighborhood, good schools and everything. And
that doesn't matter.
Yeah. But it was just like, I was just like, something feels really wrong about this place. I was like, I can't put a bid in on it.
Just to clarify, can it sometimes be just certain areas of, like, for example, a building, or like the whole building itself, or what are we talking about here?
Well, so for me, it was when I went into that house, and it was particular because we were looking at larger houses. We were looking at like 2,000 to 3,000 square foot homes. And for there, it was the main level and really the basement. Like the basement, like gave me like total creepy vibes. And then there was this upstairs telephone room. It had belonged to some older people, and it was the weirdest thing because in this room was like like AstroTurf almost. And I
Mhm.
remember my father going, "Yeah, we could rip that up," and I was like, "Nah, I don't want to go at this house." But they had a room with like just an office, and I remember calling it like the telephone room because there's like a telephone on the wall and a telephone at the desk, and I was just like, "Yeah,
That's weird.
this is odd." And then
Yeah.
going into the basement, it was just
So
like,
definitely certain areas
Yeah.
definitely trigger it more.
yeah. But a small
bring that
house is
up-
everywhere.
I bring that up because some of the places I've actually lived, there'd be like staircases. There'd be multiple staircases, but there's always one that I would avoid.
Okay.
Just because that feeling. You know, every time I would like open the door to get to that staircase, I'd immediately just close the door and be like, nope, I'm going the long way around. And nobody would take those staircases either and stuff. Like it felt like everybody just unanimously was like, I don't care how convenient this staircase is, we're gonna go elsewhere.
Yeah. Okay. Jason, what about you? Have you ever had like a feeling about?
Yeah, so I got something to share here. So I can look at since my earliest memories, I can look at pictures of the pyramids, and I'm like, cool, architecture and so forth. I can look at ruins from Greece, from Rome, from Latin America, Aztec ruins, Mayan. I can look at Machu Picchu. I can look at Stonehenge. I've got no reaction. However, when I first encountered the ruins of Angkor Wat in Cambodia, I got this cold chill, cold chill. And this was before I was aware of like the Khmer Rouge and things like that. And obviously the Khmer Rouge had nothing to do with the ruins of Angkor Wat. But that is my own experience where it's old stone, it's old architecture, it's in ruins. But it still unnerves me, and it gives me the chills. Now, I don't know if that means that it's a past life thing or what have you, but it's real. It's real in terms of seeing a place, and having this kind of cold dread about it. And again, line up 10 pictures of ancient ruins from thousands of years ago. It's just objectively, it's interesting. But Angkor Wat in Cambodia just unnerves me.
Yeah, see, I have not, to my knowledge, maybe I did. I just kind of blew it off, right? I have not experienced anything like this, so it's fascinating that that you get to all share something that you have. That's pretty cool. So now, I'm glad that you haven't had any other experiences at ExtraZero because it seems like you don't want anything to do with it.
It's just one of those things that I don't want to say, it's just such a weird thing because like on one hand, I understand like the fascination. There's some people that would like kill for the experience, but same time, it's just such an unnerving thing. You get this sense of dread, being on edge, and
it's not a fun experience. I wouldn't say it's a fun experience.
Yeah, because it makes you question your sanity. It makes you question, and in all of these cases, back in 2014, it was a work night when that happened. I was stone cold sober. There was no
And
drugs,
you said
no
when you were
alcohol.
a kid, you were just kind of a basic kid. You didn't get involved.
No medication.
Nothing. Yeah, you weren't watching scary movies. You were kind of shielded from the outside world almost. So
we were poor, so all we had to drink was Lipton tea and ice water and occasionally Kool-Aid. But at night it was ice water because we can't afford the dentist. So better not be drinking Kool-Aid at night.
The things don't change. I still can't afford the dentist.
Okay, so this we're gonna try to wrap it up here, but this has been great, ExtraZero. Thanks for sharing these experience with us here and the audience that's gonna watch that's watching now. Now, if there's anyone out there and you want to share your own little experience, you definitely can put those in the comments, and all the information about ExtraZero, I'll put that in the descriptions. Yeah, we'll put that in there. So if you want to follow Extra or Jason or Lambercy here, you can do that too. Now again, I am very glad that you were able to come out here and share this with pretty much the world. And I think I honestly believe you that this happened. It doesn't sound out of this world. Like, no, he's making this up. Because you could see it in your voice. You can hear it in your voice when you describe it. And I appreciate you coming on, and thanks for
appreciate the
hanging out.
opportunity. It's
Yeah.
it's an interesting thing to talk about, because it's just, it's funny, because for so long, I wouldn't say it's like a taboo thing to talk about, but it's just like, how do you bring something like that up?
There's so much going on, right, with the Ghost
Yeah.
Adventures and some other TV shows. They've kind of like mudded the water with this stuff, where it used to be like, remember in the 90s, what was that show? Not Unsolved Mysteries, but the other one.
Sightings?
Ghostbusters.
Sightings.
Yeah.
Where they started introducing these stories to the world, and people were really fascinated about it. And it was kind of like, whoa, I've never heard this before. And then all of a sudden, Ghost Adventures happened.
Yeah.
And then it was like a floodgate, and you weren't sure what was real or not real anymore. And then, so I think a lot of people kind of are back at the moment, like, they're looking for more of like the real stories. And I would say definitely yours is one of them. So
I almost wonder if when those things started happening, more people started coming forward, because before it was just blasphemy to even talk about it, because you'd be labeled like crazy. No matter what.
Well, they also found out you can make money off of doing stuff like this.
Yeah,
So
well, there's always that.
Big.
You know which one always got me on sightings? Was the one where people would have like the scratches manifest on their bodies.
And that never happened to you, right? You never got any injuries or anything like that.
No, just the only physical thing was that, like, it's funny. Like, yeah, some people got scratches. I got a back rub from a ghost and I didn't like it.
Man, you could have had yourself a 5-star masseuse, and you were like, I don't like this at all.
Out of the 3 stories, though, I'm the one that really freaked me out. And Jason, or you could share yours too. Well, the one that really kind of got me was the walking turtle. That I can see that as a 5-year-old being a little terrified. Jason, what story stood out to you?
I agree. It was the turtle.
Thank you. Yeah. Lambercy, what do you?
I actually think the back massage one, and the only reason why is because when I was his age, when this happened with the turtle, I had a very vivid imagination, so I could pull it off as, it might have actually been my imagination. I'm not saying it was his imagination, but like as a kid, I was able to compartmentalize these things. Like, hey, I don't know everything. I'm always asking things, so maybe it's something else. But as a grown adult, going into some place and then all of a sudden receiving a back massage, and it's not the person you're laying next to.
Right, when I could see her hands.
Exactly, you could see their hands would absolutely freak me out.
Right.
And I did ask, I said, can you see anything standing behind me? And I remember her saying no. Ask them to, and she was just calm. She said, ask them to stop.
Yeah, just ask them to stop. Well, I hope nothing crazy happened to them. And I'm glad. Hopefully nothing's happened. I'm glad you weren't injured at all either in all of this, because some people have gotten injured, or they say they have. So, all right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. This has been a great Caps conversation, and we would love to have you on ExtraZero, and when we talk about other zany stuff out here, like other mysteries, Art Bell recordings. So you're always welcome to come back. And share your insight on a lot of this. So I will definitely keep in touch. So everyone, again, you can follow me here on YouTube. You can hit the subscribe button if you want to hear more about mysteries, ghost stories, Bigfoot, all the unknown world. You can also follow me on x.com at jgun09. And then also, if you are interested to hang out, I do have a little gaming channel called Caps Arcade that you could just watch me play very high quality gaming from a 41-year-old man. So, but anyways, I will talk to you later. And thanks again. Hit the like, and we will see you next time on Late Night Cap. Later.